Hey, what's up? My name is Chris Highfill. I am Regional Church Planting Director for Converge Mid-America and Converge Southeast. I want to say thank you so much for watching this teaching online. My hope is this helps inspire you as a planter or even as a pastor of an established church to network in your community better. And so we have the incredible opportunity not only to pastor people in our church, but also to pastor the community around our church. And so that's a tension that every single pastor and every single church planter has to kind of manage. But man, it's really important that we network, that we connect in our community. And I'm going to share some stories and some principles that I've learned over the years with Converge to help you take some next steps in engaging in your community. And this is information that was taught to me early on as a planter, information that was taught to me by my church planting coaches. But my quick story is I had never planted a church before I went through a Converge assessment center 12 years ago. As I went through that assessment center, really kind of questioned whether or not when I went to assessment, some guys go to assessment thinking, oh, I'm for sure planting a church. I went to assessment center going, I'm not sure if I'm planting a church. I want to see what God has for me. I went through the process of assessment, and at the end of it, the assessors looked at my wife and I and simply said at our exit interview, you were made for this. And so I'm thinking, man, I got to go quit my perfectly good student pastor job and move to a town that I've never lived in before, that I didn't know anybody in. We were a parachute planter. My wife and I, we just jumped into a new community 3.5 hours away from our hometown to start Grace River Church. And because I didn't know what I was doing, I just simply followed the Converge playbook. So I'm not a genius. I'm not that smart. I just listened to people that were way smarter than me. And I literally followed the coaching and instruction from Church Planting 101, from Church Planting 201, and the first steps and next steps manual. And so I just want to encourage you always to look back and reference those. In fact, most of the teaching that comes today, with today's teaching, comes from those manuals. And so really, when it comes to networking, I'm a business college dropout. Before I felt the call to ministry, I was going to business college and I was learning business principles. And so as I dropped out of business college, I thought, man, I'm never going to use this ever again. And it's interesting because there are some business principles that you pick up along the way that are really important when it comes to the church. And so, and networking happens to be one of those principles that I think is really important. But when you think about networking, don't think of it necessarily just as a business networking. Instead, think of networking as being missional. When you think about the greatest missionary to ever live, arguably maybe the Apostle Paul, correct? And Paul had a way about him, about networking and connecting in a community. It's no mistake that Paul would plant churches and start churches in port towns. Well, why would he do that? He did that because those were towns and centers of cities that were influential. He did this on purpose. And so for us, we have to think missionally whenever we're thinking about networking. And I want to give you 10 quick rules for networking. And the first rule in networking is that you make the decision to simply trust in God's provision, that it's God that's going to plant this church, or it's God that's going to give you influence in this community. It's not you, it's Him. And so that starts really with some humility of saying, hey, this isn't about me. This is about what God is going to do through me. And so you got to trust in His provision and count on Him to do it. And that takes part in your prayer life. Also, you have to take the posture of a servant. So don't pretend like you're moving into this new community, or maybe you've been living in this community for a while. And you've just introduced yourself as a pastor or as a church planter. Well, take on the posture of a servant. Don't come into the community as this superhero that's going to come and save them from all of their brokenness. Instead, take on the posture of a servant to say, I'm here to help make this community an even better place. And so, the first spot to start with there is to say, I'm taking on the posture of a servant. Also, be an effective listener. I think as pastors, as Christian workers, sometimes we are really lousy at listening to people. But one of the ways that you're going to network and one of the ways you're going to build bridges in the community is you have got to take the advice of James, and that's simply to be slow to speak and be quick to listen. Man, take a notebook with you to appointments. When you network with people, write things down. Don't put them in your phone. Literally take a notebook with you and write things down when you go and meet with people, not just people in your church. I'm talking about people outside of your church, influential leaders in the community, people that you meet for a cup of coffee. Make sure you're writing things down and that you're being an effective listener. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But also be an initiator. Now, you may be an introvert or you may be an extrovert, right? And we're all kind of a combination of both, I think. But Oftentimes we move to a new community, or we're a part of a new community, or a part of a new thing in our community, and we think, oh, everyone isn't very friendly. Christians, we are the worst at this, to be honest, right? We think that no one wants to accept us, but the reality is we're just not being initiators. You have got to walk across the room and do it with confidence, extend a hand, shake a hand, meet a person, get to know their name, and initiate the conversation. We're oftentimes looking for people to initiate the conversation with us, and we've all been in that place before where you were like a guest or a first-time guest at a church and you felt awkward, right? Well, that's the way it also works whenever you go to a community event. It can oftentimes feel awkward when you show up to something for the first time, but I'm encouraging you to do the same thing you would do at church, which is just simply initiate the conversation. And that's the heart of a missionary, really. Make a memorable first impression. And so make sure that you've combed your hair. Make sure that you've brushed your teeth, that you don't have like put some gum in or a mint or something. Nobody wants to talk to somebody with some tardy, funky breath, right? So make sure that you look presentable. Be at your best, because the first impression, you don't get a chance to make a second one, right? So you want to make sure that you look nice. The next thing is to take every referral seriously. There will be some people that will give you a referral. Hey, you need to meet with my friend who doesn't know Jesus, or you need to meet with my friend who's going through a life crisis. You need to meet with my friend who's going through the grieving process or whatever. Make sure that you follow up with every referral and thank the person that gave you the referral. And so, one of the things that has really worked for us is that we joined the local Chamber of Commerce. And I took every single referral seriously. They knew that I was starting a new church. And so they would give me the contact names of people that were looking for a new church. And so I took every single referral seriously. I followed up with every referral, and I always thanked the person, the business owner, or one of my new friends that I made in the chamber. I always went back to say thank you for the referral. And this is just a way to kind of build a network in the community. And so take every single referral seriously. Try something new. I think sometimes we get so stuck in our routines. This is the day I do my sermon prep, and this is the day I do this, and the day I do this, and the day I do this. And what I would say is try something new. In fact, if you are in the pre-launch or even like post-launch phase, and your church is kind of new, and maybe you've got 100 people or 150 or 200 people, here's the thing. Take some of this time that you have right now, whether you're pre-launch or post-launch, and spend time with people outside of your church. And what you have to do is you have to continually decide to try new things. Go join different civic organizations, right? If something's happening at City Hall, go learn about it. It's important that you're always trying something new, that you're jumping into new groups and trying new things. And so maybe the Chamber of Commerce doesn't work in your area. Maybe that's an old established group of fuddy-duddy people, okay? If that's the case, then go find something that's not. Go join the Kiwanis, or go join another civic organization that's out there somewhere, and just try new things until you find the way that you can break into the community. Eventually, you will find the keys to the community if you just try some new things. The eighth thing is develop partnerships. Make a decision to say, I am going to develop strategic partnerships in the community with some nonprofits that are doing some work that your church can't do. And so be strategic about that, though. I would make sure that these partnerships have some kind of faith foundation. I would also be sure that these partnerships are going to be accomplishing something in their nonprofit that you won't be able to accomplish in your nonprofit in the church. And so, maybe that's a home for teenage pregnant girls. Maybe that's a food shelter. I don't know what it is in your community that you could go join, but develop partnerships with other organizations that are making a difference in the community, and don't feel like you always have to reinvent that wheel. Go join in on what's already happening. And so develop that strategic partnership. Also, keep accurate records. In networking, you want to keep an Excel file or a Google Sheet or an iPhone note or something where you can track who you met with, what you talked about, and if you got to a place where they asked you for a prayer request, that you could write that down as well, and then you could actually do this, pray for them, and then send them a text message, an email, or even a handwritten note letting them know you prayed for their back surgery, letting them know that you prayed for the conflict that they're experiencing in their marriage, that you're praying for their potential job loss or transfer or whatever it may be. Like, keep accurate records so you can follow up with people and you don't forget. Man, for me, I forget. If I don't write it down, I will forget it. And so make sure you're keeping accurate records. And then also, always follow up. So follow up with the person who gave you the referral, but also follow up with the person that you met with. Make sure you send that email thanking them for their time. Make sure you spend some time just simply saying, hey, I really appreciated that, and letting them know that you're there for them. And so that's 10 quick rules for networking. And then you also want to think about how it is that you enter into your community. So when I say that, what I'm saying is how you enter into your community is really important. Whether you live in the community now or you're moving to that community, how is it that you're perceived in the community? It's really, really important. And also just your heart attitude about the community. So 5 really just quick roles for you to connect in your community. The first one is this, is that you would enter into the community as an intercessor. That before you meet with anybody, before you start networking, before you start building engagement in the community, whatever your strategy is going to be, the strategy has to start with you praying. And I know that seems so simple, but I think we're action-oriented people. In fact, you're watching this video today because you're action-oriented. You want to know how you can engage in your community. And what I'm telling you, before you can engage in your community, is you have to engage with God, because God knows all about the brokenness in your community. He loves the people in your community. He wants your church to reach those people way worse than you do, but it starts with His power. It starts with power in prayer. And so make sure that you slow down and you take the effective time to actually prayer walk your community. Like, literally get out of your car and walk the subdivisions of your community, or walk the apartment complexes, around apartment complexes in your community. Like, that you would take time, or maybe you live in a setting where things aren't close together. Maybe it's just driving through your community and praying. Like, take the time to be an intercessor and begin to pray for things that are broken in your community. The beauty of this is that the first restored marriage that you get to be a part of, you can say this with integrity: I prayed for you before I even met you. The drug addict that gets set free, you can say, I prayed for you before I met you. The first person that receives Christ in your church, I prayed for you before I even met you. You see the power behind that? Whenever you're able to say with integrity that you prayed for life change to happen, and then it actually happened. The second role that you have to take on is the role of a learner. So again, whether you've lived in this community all your life, or for the last 5 or 10 years, or you're brand new to the community, you have to enter in with the posture of a learner to say, I am learning what's happening in this community. And so pre-launch or post-launch of a church plant, or even an established situation where you're pastoring an established church, man, go and learn from the top 20 leaders in the community. Maybe you make a list of 10 to 20 influential leaders, and you just go meet with them, right? And you enter in as a learner. Now, examples of top 10 or 20, I think it's really simple to go, I'm going to meet with the mayor. You know that if you email the mayor of your city, or find out the administrative assistant's email, that they will actually meet with you. That no matter how large your municipality is or how small it is, mayors want to meet with clergy. And so let them know that you're a pastor or a new pastor in the area, and go meet with them. I did that here in O'Fallon whenever we moved here nearly over 9 years ago. I met with the mayor, and it's interesting because I saw our mayor yesterday, and we were at a meeting together at City Hall, and we joked about our first meeting because I showed up wanting to make a good impression. I showed up wearing a suit and a tie, and he showed up wearing jeans and a polo shirt. And so now whenever I go to his office to meet with him about different things, I never wear a suit and a tie anymore. But it made a memorable first impression, and he actually knew that I was serious about what we were doing. But that's just one of a lot of different stories of people you could meet with, though. So the mayor, the police chief, the fire chief, meet with the president of the Chamber of Commerce, meet with the school superintendent. And when you meet with these people, meet with your HOA president of the subdivision that you may live in, meet with different civic leaders and people that are doing things in the community. And when you meet with them, you want to make sure you're asking 3 or 4 questions like this. And this helps you bring a notebook to the meeting when you're networking with them, and ask questions like this. Ask them how they got into what they're doing today. Like, ask them that. Like, tell me more about your journey. How did you become the police chief, right? How did you become a regional sales manager? How did you become the president of the chamber? Like, genuinely ask, and then practice this art. Actually listen and write a few things down. The second question that you can ask them is, ask them what this community is really proud about. Like, what do you think people are really proud about around here? And the answers you'll get will be amazing. Well, people are really proud of our park system. They're really proud of our education system. They're really proud of the low crime rate or whatever, right? And then the follow-up question to the what people are really proud of question is, what are people a little embarrassed about that nobody wants to talk about? And this question is really important because it'll show you what's really broken in your community. And you'll get a lot of different takes on this question, but you want to continue that posture of a learner and don't combat their response. Actually listen and write down what they're talking about. And then ask this next follow-up question, which would be, with all the broken things in our community, what do you think a church could do to help solve some of the problems? And then again, let them respond. And then what's interesting is as you ask questions, what you're doing is you're actually earning the right to be heard later. Because if you ask them how they got into what they're doing, guess what they're going to ask you later? They're more than likely going to ask you how you got into what you're doing. And my encouragement to you is don't start with the Bible college story. Don't start with, I felt this call to plant this church or felt this call to pastor this church. Instead, start with your spiritual story. Start with the fact that maybe you didn't always grow up Christian. Start with the fact that that you didn't always follow Jesus and give the 1-minute version of your story. Leave them wanting more. Again, this is not a sermon for you. This is the 1-minute, 60-second, 90-second version of how it is that you came to faith in Christ. And that gives you a chance to kind of witness and share your story with the person that you're meeting with. But you have to start as a learner. You're entering into the community, you're writing these things down, and you're following up with the things that you've learned. Maybe you're putting all of that data in the spreadsheet that you've created so you can learn, gather things. And this is so important because this will help you as you develop initiatives for your church plant or for your established church to be able to effectively reach people in the community. Because here's the thing. There is the demographic work that you can look up on Wikipedia. So you can find out socioeconomic things, you can find out race, you can find out all these different things, the number one employer. You can do all of that on Wikipedia. I did that for the county that I moved into, right? But demographic work is one thing. Ethnographic work is the work of sitting down across the table from somebody else and actually learning what's broken, actually being interested in the pulse of the community. You can know all the head knowledge about something, but until you're actually living in it, until you're actually in the place, you can't really be a missionary to it. And so make sure you're being a learner. Also, the next step is to, once you've learned the needs, now actually go do something about it. And so when you learn the brokenness of the community, when you learn what they're proud of, go join in and serve them. Instead of complaining about the brokenness, instead of making up excuses of why your church can't make a difference, you've now learned what's broken. So now you can enter in as a servant. So figure out different teams that you can develop in your church that other people can help you lead, that you can go, okay, we're going to go serve single women in our community, right? We're going to go serve undereducated kids. We're going to go serve. We're going to be servants, and with servanthood comes friend or ally. And so once you've earned the credibility of doing backpack drives or food drives or engaging in Thanksgiving Day giveaways, like engaging in other things that are already happening, once you've done that as a servant, check this out. Now, they don't view you as an outsider. Now they start viewing you as a friend or an ally, and this is where it starts getting fun. Now, all of this process is fun, but the reward begins to happen whenever you become friend or ally. And here's how you know you're a friend or ally. When was the last time an unchurched person invited you to a party they were throwing? When you start getting those invites, when you start spending time with people that are really, really far from God, there is something beautiful that happens here. And now you're earning that credibility as a friend or an ally to tell the greatest story ever told. And friends, that's the story of the gospel, right? This is why we got into what we're doing, so we could share the marvelous, incredible story of this mystery of God, that God would come from heaven to earth, that he would bankrupt heaven to come and be with me and to come and be with you. But here's the thing. Too many of us skip all of these steps and we just want to go to storyteller. You're convinced that people are going to show up to your church because you're a really good preacher. And I'm about to break some really harsh news to you. They don't care how good you are at preaching. You've heard the old adage, they don't care about how much you know, they want to know how much you care. And you've got to walk through these steps first in order to make that happen. And so take on these roles, and these are in order. And make sure you follow these and do the hard work of networking. Develop a system where you're doing this and making a decision to say, man, I'm going to meet, whether you're in pre-launch or post-launch, you got to make a decision as a planter or as a pastor to go, these are the amount of people I'm going to meet with every single week that are outside of our church, and work that system. So you're going to have to email some people. You're going to have to join a civic organization. One of the beauties of joining a civic organization is it's really awkward if I walk up to you and say, hey, we should have a cup of coffee. Like if we're just in a coffee shop together, you get your earbuds in, and I walk up to you and, say, hey, we should meet and talk sometime. I'm an incredibly awkward person. And so I need something to make it less awkward. And that's why it's really great to join some organization, because it's not weird when you walk up to an insurance agent at some kind of a business function and say, hey, I want to learn more about your insurance agency. Guess what? They're going to say, yeah, I want to learn more about your church. That's it. And now you exchange emails, then you actually follow up with the email, then you set a date, and then you go and have a cup of coffee. I encourage cups of coffee, and here's why. Lunch is long and expensive. Coffee can be 30 minutes. And I also encourage you to think about blocking your time to think, okay, maybe Tuesday mornings is going to be your day to do networking. And so set up 3 or 4 networking appointments back to back to back to back and do them in the same coffee shop. That way people think that you're super busy, and you don't want, that's a great thing, And so you don't have to dispel that perception. Just let it ride. And that way you don't spend too much time at each appointment. So intercessor, learner, servant, friend or ally, and leading up to telling the greatest story ever told. And so one other principle that I think is really important to share is a principle that Jesus taught his disciples, which is to always be looking for a person of peace in your community. People of peace, this person of peace principle is a principle that we used in planting Grace River Church, and it was super helpful because, as I mentioned, we didn't know anybody. And so we joined the local Chamber of Commerce, and through joining the chamber, I found a man of peace and a woman of peace. One wasn't even a Christian, that welcomed us into the community and loudly proclaimed the start of our new church. But here's what to look for in looking for a person of peace. You're looking for somebody that has an openness to a relationship with you as a planter. Like they're someone that they're outside of your launch team, or maybe they're outside of your church, and they're excited about you and your church. Like they're early adopters. They're what we call sneezers, right? And so they're excited about telling people about what you do and about your church. And so they have an openness to the gospel. Again, maybe they're not Christians. It'd be great if they were, but maybe they're not. But they have an openness to it. They're not angry atheists. They could be just like apologetic, agnostics or whatever, right? But it's important that they're open to the gospel, because guess what? This is the beauty of this. Guess who spiritually lost people know? Tons of other spiritually lost people. Guess who Christians know? Too many church planters build their church plant on only Christians. And the problem with that is Christians only know Christians. We plant churches so we can reach people that are really far from God. That's why this principle is so important, because when you find a man or a woman of peace, they're more than likely what I call a townie. And so they're from the town that you're planting in. And if you're like me and you're not from the town you plant in, you need a townie or two. And the townies are great. New move-ins are awesome, but townies know everyone in the town. They're from there. They know the history of everything. And when you have your first big Easter, your first big Christmas Eve, whenever they get baptized at your church, guess who's going to show up to your church? Everybody they know. That is the power of reaching a person that's a person of peace. They also have great influence among family and friends in the community. And so a person of peace is somebody that has gigantic amounts of influence. Again, new move-ins are awesome. Those are great. New move-ins need community that your church can provide. But what's incredible is whenever you can reach someone that has great influence over family and friends, man, we see God doing amazing things through that. And by the way, this isn't a gimmicky thing. The Apostle Paul did this. I mean, study his life and think about the influential people that he led to Christ. And then because of that person's influence, they led a bunch of people to Christ. And so some of you, as you are listening to this, feel like this may be a little gimmicky. And I just want to push back on that a little bit, right? And go, okay, what does the Bible have to say about the greatest missionary journey ever, right? Now, I'm not, so anyways, they have the ability to introduce you to key community leaders. I mean, man, one of the greatest things that happened with one of my people of peace, my first one was a guy named Bill Holt. Bill was my real estate agent. I met him through the chamber. He sold us the first house that we moved into. And Bill, incredible guy. Bill has a 7-day Advent background. And so he considers himself a Christian and is a Christian. But like we didn't have like perfect alignment on our theological whatever, right? But what was really interesting was Bill stood up in a meeting with 30 of our peers. And he said this, I'll never forget. This was a turning point in the life of our church. We're in pre-launch phase. We're doing monthly preview services. And Bill stood up at a Chamber of Commerce Christmas party with about 30 of our peers in the room. I'll never forget this day because Bill stood up and said, I've been going to the preview services at Grace River Church once a month. And he said, they've been powerful and incredible. And I want to invite you and your family out to Christmas Eve services at Grace River Church. And I'm sitting back in my chair thinking, oh my gosh, because Bill was like the grandpa of this group. Bill was the dad that everybody was looking for, that they didn't have, right? And Bill just invited 30 of our peers to Christmas Eve at Grace River, our very first Christmas Eve service. And 15 of the 30 people that were in that room showed up. Now, why did they show up? They didn't show up because I invited them. They showed up because Bill invited them. And this is the importance of finding that man or woman of peace. And they also serve as great bringers and includes into the life of the church. So they're includers. They bring people in. And so you want to make sure that you're finding your man or woman of peace. This is really essential in the development of your church. And if your church is going to be outreach oriented, if evangelism is going to be a culture in your church, it's got to start with you as the point person. It's got to start with you as, hey, you need to be able to share stories with your launch team of people that you're networking with, people that you're meeting. You can't expect people to go and do things that you're not doing yourself. So make sure that you're doing the hard work of networking. And so again, some networking basics. Make sure you cultivate the community through prayer and hard work. Man, you need to be throwing out seeds of awareness in the community. And man, you got to do the hard work of praying and engaging in your community. Also develop a contacting strategy. Again, we call it a 3x5, that you're going to be making sure that you contact at least 5 people so you can have 3 appointments, because more than likely 2 of them won't respond. But if you want to have 3 appointments a week, you got to contact 5. And so whatever your system's going to be, much like the fundraising system, develop a system when it comes to networking. And I want to encourage you to read First Steps to Planting a Church. You can actually see in that booklet a great strategy, and there's even a list of leaders in the community that you should meet with. And so develop a contacting strategy. Also, determine the number of contacts per week. I said that a second ago, but man, maybe you need to make 5 to 10 contacts a week so you can get 3 to 5 meetings a week. And so you got to determine that ahead of time. And then you got to develop a contact list for follow-up. I said that earlier, but make sure you have some kind of a spreadsheet or an iPhone note or something that you're keeping up with who it is that you're meeting with. And I just want to say, man, we are in some of the most exciting work that a follower of Christ could be in. It's amazing, isn't it? Like what we get to do. We get to be professionals at this. And so I would tell you, man, let's take this seriously. Let's be missionaries in our communities. Let's enter in as learners, right? Let's figure out, let's pray. Let's enter in as a learner. Let's serve in the community. Let's become a friend or an ally. And then let's become storytellers, guys. Like let's find a way to break into the community and tell them the greatest story ever told. I know that you can do this. If we were able to do it, I know that you can. And so I want you to know we're praying for you, and we want to help you take your next steps as you work through this. And so if you have any questions, feel free to email me. It's chris@graceriver.cc. That's chris@graceriver.cc. You can also email me at chris@convergemidamerica.com. That's chris@convergemidamerica.com. Again, I want to say thank you so much for watching today. I hope that you have an awesome rest of your day and take some next steps as you plant your church. Thanks.